You've been sabotaging yourself your entire life, and you don't even know it. Right now, as you're watching this, there's a part of your mind that's actively working against your success, your happiness, and your growth. It's not your fault. This invisible force has been programmed into you since childhood, and it's so clever that it disguises itself as logic, as being realistic, as protecting you from disappointment. But what if I told you that Carl Jung cracked the code on this self-sabotage? What if he discovered that the very mechanism that's been holding you back is actually the source of your greatest untapped power? In the next 15 minutes, I'm going to reveal Jung's most dangerous insight, one that most therapists won't tell you, because once you understand it, you'll never be able to unsee how you've been unconsciously betraying yourself. And more importantly, you'll finally know how to stop. But first, let me share something that will change how you see yourself forever. Carl Gustav Jung was 38 years old when he experienced what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. It wasn't a gentle awakening. It was a psychological earthquake that nearly destroyed him. For months, he felt like he was losing his mind. He saw visions, heard voices, and experienced dreams so vivid and terrifying that he questioned his sanity. His colleagues whispered that the brilliant psychiatrist had finally cracked under the pressure of exploring the human psyche too deeply. But Jung didn't retreat. Instead, he did something that would revolutionize psychology forever. He decided to go deeper. He realized that what was happening to him wasn't madness. It was an invitation. The unconscious mind wasn't trying to destroy him. It was trying to show him something crucial about human nature that no one had understood before. What Jung discovered during those dark months would eventually become his theory of the shadow, the hidden part of our personality that contains everything we don't want to admit about ourselves. But here's what most people don't understand about Jung's shadow. It's not just your dark side. It's the repository of your untapped power, your unrealized potential, and paradoxically, the key to your greatest strengths. Think about this for a moment. Every time you've felt stuck in life, every time you've repeated the same mistakes, every time you've sabotaged your own success, Jung would tell you that your shadow was in control. Not because it wanted to hurt you, but because you refused to acknowledge it existed. Let me give you a real example. Sarah is a 35-year-old marketing executive who came to therapy because she couldn't understand why she kept choosing partners who treated her poorly. Despite being successful, intelligent, and accomplished in every other area of her life, her relationships were disasters. She described herself as independent and strong, but her relationship patterns told a different story. Through Jung's lens, Sarah's shadow contained all the parts of herself she had rejected, her neediness, her vulnerability, her desire to be taken care of. Because she had banished these qualities to her unconscious, they controlled her choices from the shadows. She was unconsciously attracted to partners who would force her into the very vulnerability she despised in herself. The breakthrough came when Sarah stopped fighting her shadow and started listening to it. She realized that her fierce independence wasn't strength. It was a defense mechanism protecting a wounded part of herself that desperately needed love and care. When she acknowledged and integrated this shadow aspect, she began attracting healthier relationships because she was no longer unconsciously seeking someone to force her into her disowned vulnerability. This is the pattern Jung observed over and over again. What we resist in ourselves doesn't disappear. It gains power over us from the unconscious realm. But the shadow isn't just about personal relationships. It shows up in every area of your life where you feel powerless or stuck. If you're constantly struggling with money, your shadow might contain beliefs about worthiness or power that you've never consciously examined. If you procrastinate on important projects, your shadow might be protecting you from the risk of failure, or even more terrifyingly, the risk of success. Jung called this phenomenon psychological projection. We project our shadow qualities onto others because it's easier than owning them ourselves. The boss you hate for being controlling. Jung would ask what aspects of control you've disowned in yourself. The friend who annoys you with their neediness? What neediness are you refusing to acknowledge in your own psyche? Here's where it gets really interesting. Jung discovered that our shadow doesn't just contain negative qualities. It also holds positive traits we've been taught to suppress. Maybe you were raised to be humble, so your confidence got banished to the shadow. Maybe you were taught that anger was bad, so your healthy assertiveness lives in your unconscious. Maybe you were told that creativity was impractical, so your artistic gifts are locked away in the depths of your psyche. This is why Jung insisted that individuation, the process of becoming whole, required shadow work. You can't become your authentic self while half of your personality is locked away in the unconscious, controlling your life from behind the scenes. Let me share another example. Marcus was a soft-spoken accountant who prided himself on being nice, agreeable, and conflict avoidant. He came to therapy because he felt invisible in his own life. His wife made all the decisions, his boss overlooked him for promotions, and his teenage children barely listened to him. Marcus couldn't understand why he felt so powerless despite doing everything right. Jung's shadow work revealed that Marcus had banished all of his aggressive, assertive energy to his unconscious because his family had taught him that anger and confrontation were bad. But this negative energy wasn't actually negative. It was his power source. His assertiveness, his ability to set boundaries, his capacity to fight for what he believed in. All of this was locked away in his shadow. The transformation began when Marcus started having conversations with his shadow in therapy. Instead of being the nice guy all the time, he began to access his healthy aggression. He started setting boundaries at work, speaking up in his marriage, and commanding respect from his children. Paradoxically, as he integrated these supposedly negative qualities, he became more genuinely kind and compassionate, not less. This is Jung's radical insight. The shadow isn't your enemy, it's your ally in disguise. Every quality you've disowned, every emotion you've suppressed, every aspect of yourself you've deemed unacceptable is actually a reservoir of untapped energy waiting to be reclaimed. But here's the challenge. Shadow work isn't comfortable. It requires you to confront the parts of yourself you've spent years avoiding. It means admitting that you're not who you think you are. You're actually far more complex, far more powerful, and far more complete than your conscious mind wants to acknowledge. Jung developed specific techniques for working with the shadow, and one of the most powerful is what he called active imagination. This involves dialoguing with the rejected aspects of your personality as if they were separate entities. Instead of fighting your anger, you might have a conversation with it. What are you trying to tell me? What do you need? How can we work together? This might sound strange, but Jung discovered that when we approach our shadow with curiosity rather than judgment, it stops controlling us unconsciously and starts serving us consciously. Your shadow anger might transform into healthy assertiveness. Your shadow sadness might become deep compassion. Your shadow selfishness might evolve into healthy self-care and boundaries. Think about the areas of your life where you feel most powerless right now. According to Jung, those feelings of powerlessness are pointing directly toward the shadow qualities you need to reclaim. If you feel powerless in relationships, what aspects of your personality have you been suppressing in order to be lovable? If you feel powerless at work, what parts of your ambition, creativity, or authority have you banished to the unconscious? Jung also discovered that our shadow often appears in our dreams, usually as figures of the same gender who embody the qualities we've rejected. The aggressive person chasing you in your nightmare might be your disowned assertiveness trying to get your attention. The criminal or villain in your dreams might represent the rule-breaking, boundary-crossing energy you need to access in order to create change in your life. But perhaps the most profound aspect of Jung's shadow work is what happens when you begin to integrate these rejected parts of yourself. Jung called this process individuation, the journey towards psychological wholeness. As you reclaim your shadow qualities, you stop being controlled by them unconsciously and start choosing how to express them consciously. This is when real power emerges, not the power to control others, but the power to choose your responses, to access your full range of human emotions and capabilities, and to show up authentically in the world instead of performing a limited version of yourself. Let me give you one final example that illustrates the transformative power of shadow integration. Jennifer was a spiritual teacher who had built her entire identity around being loving, peaceful, and positive. She meditated daily, practiced gratitude, and taught others about the power of positive thinking. But privately, she was miserable. She felt fake, exhausted from constantly suppressing her negative emotions, and deeply resentful of having to be on all the time. Jennifer's shadow contained all the anger, frustration, and darkness she had deemed unspiritual. Through Jung's work, she learned to dialogue with these rejected emotions instead of pushing them away. She discovered that her anger wasn't unspiritual. It was pointing toward injustices that needed to be addressed. Her frustration wasn't negative. It was creative energy blocked by her need to appear perfect. As Jennifer integrated her shadow, her spiritual teaching became more authentic and powerful. Instead of teaching from a place of performance, she began teaching from a place of wholeness. Her students found her more relatable, more genuine, and ultimately more helpful because she had stopped pretending to be perfect and started modeling what it looked like to be fully human. This is the promise of Jung's shadow work. Not perfection, but integration. Not the elimination of difficult emotions, but the conscious choice of how to express them. Not the creation of a flawless persona, but the development of an authentic self that can access the full spectrum of human experience. Now here's the revelation I promised you at the beginning, the insight that could transform your understanding of your own life. Jung discovered that the very qualities you judge most harshly in yourself are often the keys to your greatest gifts. Your sensitivity, which you might see as weakness, could be your superpower for understanding others. Your anger, which you might suppress as inappropriate, could be the fuel for necessary change in your life. Your selfishness, which you might condemn as wrong, could actually be healthy self-advocacy that you desperately need. The patterns that keep you powerless aren't random. They're your psyche's way of trying to get your attention. Every repeated failure, every self-sabotaging behavior, every area where you feel stuck is actually your shadow trying to show you what you need to integrate. Jung would tell you that your symptoms are not your problem. They're pointing toward your solution. So here's your invitation to begin your own shadow work. Instead of asking, how do I fix what's wrong with me? Start asking, what is my psyche trying to show me? What rejected parts of myself are trying to get my attention through these patterns? This week, pay attention to what triggers you in other people. Jung would remind you that your strongest reactions to others are usually mirrors reflecting your own disowned shadow qualities. Instead of judging these reactions, get curious about them. What part of yourself might you be seeing reflected back? The journey into your shadow isn't easy, but Jung proved that it's the path to genuine power. Not power over others, but power over your own life. When you stop running from the parts of yourself you don't like and start integrating them consciously, you reclaim the energy that was being used to keep them suppressed. You stop being controlled by unconscious patterns and start making conscious choices. If this exploration of Jung's shadow work has resonated with you, I want to hear about it in the comments below. Share what patterns you're recognizing in your own life, or what shadow qualities you're beginning to acknowledge. Your insights might help someone else on their journey towards psychological wholeness. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into Jung's transformative insights. Next week, we'll be exploring Jung's concept of the anima and animus, the hidden masculine and feminine aspects of your psyche that are secretly influencing every relationship you have. We'll discover how integrating these inner opposites can transform not just how you connect with others, but how you connect with your own creative and spiritual energy. Until then, remember Jung's words. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your shadow isn't your enemy. It's the guardian of your greatest potential, waiting for you to be brave enough to say hello. The mirror is waiting. Your shadow is ready to speak. The only question is, are you ready to listen?